Robert Reeves, born April 15th, 1926. Today's date is February the 8th, 2019. We're meeting here in New Lisbon in the house I was born in, and was built in 1920, so it's almost 100 years old. And when it was built, it had electricity. And J.J. White, who lived right up the road from us, furnished the electric by water power. He had a water wheel in a lake right up here, and the water wheel generated the electricity. It was direct current. And he furnished the houses here and where he lived up there. Springfield Road run from New Lisbon to the Springfield Meeting House, which is right outside of Wrightstown, New Jersey. Every meeting house, Quaker meeting house in New Jersey, they were approximately 5 miles apart. So you could go by horse and buggy. Earliest memory of Whitesbog was, I'd say, when I was about 10, 12 years old. My mother used to tell me that she used to go up to Whitesbog to see her uncle, Joe Haynes, who was superintendent of Whitesbog at the time. And she would stay there a couple weeks in the summer. And she thought that was very nice, because she lived in Smithville, New Jersey, which is a well-known company town also. My grandfather and Joseph J. White were very good friends. They were both in the cranberry business. Of course, Joseph White was in the business long before my grandfather. My grandfather didn't start in the business till 1890. And he and Joseph White used to share a train that they would get their... Joseph J. White at one time had 600 migrants, and they came from Philadelphia. My grandfather, who was a smaller grower than Joseph White, had 100 migrants. They were Italians and come from South Philadelphia. They would go to take the ferry across to Camden, get on the train. My grandfather was a station agent, so he arranged a special train for he and J. White to have these Italians brought to their farm around the 1st of September. And then they went back home in November, usually 1st of November. They tried to get done harvesting. My father started in the blueberry business in 1927.
Okay.
And I didn't start until 1948, when I was about 18 years old. And now I'll just ask you something maybe you'll know the answer to.
Oh, okay.
Back then in 1946, 47, if you were 18 years old, you couldn't own property.
Oh, wow.
So I had to get the deed to the property in my father's name. And when I turned 21, he signed it over to me. And of course, ground was cheap then, $50 an acre.
Well, yeah. It was cheaper.
I bought 212 acres,
wow.
$10,000, so it was a little less than $50 an acre. Cranberries were at Bear Hole, we call it. You know where Lebanon Lakes is?
Right.
Above Lebanon Lakes, on the stream, above there, on the Bisbee Mill Creek. And my grandfather bought that property in 1900. He had cranberry bogs here where the blueberry fields are in New Lisbon. He started them in 1890. But then he bought this tract of ground that was a couple thousand acres. I think he picked it up at a tax sale for $2 or $3 an acre, something like that. And started this property up there at what we call Bear Hole, or now it's in
Lebanon?
Lyndon Burns State Forest.
Yes, Brendan Burns State
Brendan
Forest.
Burns, yes.
You signed it over to him as part of, or did they buy it?
When my grandfather died, he left it to his two sons.
Uh-huh.
And then they sold it to the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
And it's in the Lyndon Burns State Forest.
Brendan Burns State Forest. I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah, same as Whitesbog. During World War II, we had trouble getting people to harvest the crop. And I don't remember just how Joseph J. White handled it, but my grandfather, who had about 200 or 300 acres of cranberries, hired Jamaicans from Jamaica, and they would come up and harvest the crop for him and then go back to Jamaica. Elizabeth White, how I first come to know Elizabeth White was through the church. She belonged to the Episcopal Church in Pemberton, and she was the treasurer of the church. At that time, women were not allowed to be on the vestry, the board of directors, if you want to say. And so they appointed her treasurer to get around it. And she used to come to church every Sunday, and I started going there to the Episcopal Church in about 1933. And at that time, my father, who was during the Depression, we didn't have any car. So to get to Sunday school, there was a church right here in New Lisbon, but it closed because they couldn't find a minister. So my parents insisted that I had to go to Sunday school, so J.J. White furnished a bus, and the bus run from New Lisbon
To Pemberton.
to Pemberton, yes. What was the name of the village up here? So they would start there, go through New Lisbon, over to Magnolia, and the time they got to the church in Pemberton, they had a busload of kids, because that's only no television, no radios, hardly. There was radios, but not many of them. So that's how I started going to the church in Pemberton, and she was the treasurer of the church at the time. And I remember lots of times she'd have a chauffeur take her to church. June Vale.
Yeah, June Vale. So she was coming from Whitesbog back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got to know her at church. I don't think I was ever in her house at Whitesbog until the day of the funeral. That's the first time I was in her house.
Why do you think Whitesbog is important today?
Well, it was a company town. There isn't many company towns left around. And had its own general store, post office. And I think that's about it'd be similar to Batstow and the other villages, Smithville. And there isn't many of them around that are left anymore. I don't know of any that are active. My grandfather had a general store. Only he would service the pickers that he had at Bear Hole property, and he'd also go around to Sheep Pen Hill, where that was a big cranberry property,
Right.
and deliver groceries there, because these Italians would come up from Philadelphia and then had to have some kind buy their macaroni and cheese and stuff, spaghetti.
Yeah, they made a lot of their stuff, but
So he had a wagon, horse and wagon. And my father, I recall him saying that he used to drive the horse and wagon over to Sheep Pen Hill to deliver groceries to the Italians over there. On the back of the book is the picture of my granddaughter, Chelsea. Carlberg is her name. And I dictated on a tape recorder, and then she would do the book for me. Off the tape, and then she got a girlfriend of hers, I can't think of her name, I should know, it's probably in here somewhere. She did the pictures for me, and she did a beautiful job with the pictures, I thought. And
what's the name of it? Show us the picture of the copy, the front.
Reeves' account of New Lisbon. And I kept telling them stories about how I was when I was a kid, and they kept saying, Grandpop, you ought to record this so we can know what's going on after you're dead and gone. I said, well, if you want to do it, you'll have to do it because I can't do it. So that's how we got to writing the book. And it starts off with my grandfather. In fact, I got a picture of him here. And he was a politician. Let's see. He was county clerk for 8 years in Burlington County. He was a station agent, the assessor of Pemberton Township. He was on the Board of Education. He had his fingers in all these pies. And then besides that, he started the cranberries. And then later on, he went into the blueberries, but not very heavy. He was a small grower, blueberries, but mostly cranberries he was. Yeah. It shows a picture of him.
And it seems to me that the way you put it together, you have the names of the family members as chapters.
Yeah.
And you've told
There's
about...
a picture of my grandfather.
Oh, wow.
That was when we was in politics. Miss White and Dr. Colville got together. Dr. Colville was from New Hampshire. And I knew the family very well. They lived in New Lisbon. His son did, Dr. Colville himself, lived up in Whitesbog when he was doing experiments with Miss White. The Whitesbog property to come down because she figured that was the soil and everything, the water table and all was just right for blueberries. And I guess he agreed with her. He worked for the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. Elizabeth thought she should be the president of the company. Well, women weren't accepted at that time as running companies or businesses. So anyhow, she and Dr. Colville got together. They, you probably have seen the cards, and she gave them to the local Pineys. I'm a Piney, you know, thoroughbred. And they would be wild huckleberrying at the time. We called it huckleberries. And you go out in the woods and find these bushes. And if you found a plant that had a certain size berry on it, you would mark it and take her out there, or some of her helpers, and they would dig the plant up and take it back to Whitesbog. And that's the way they started propagating it. And there's still, the Rubel is the original variety, I think. It develops along the way. Right now, there's 22 states in the United States that raise blueberries. And it all started at Whitesbog. And it's spread all over. The pH for blueberries has to be between 4 and 5, they say, to raise a good crop. And that's what the Pine Barrens is, that's what the pH is here. Where you go out in Lancaster County in Pennsylvania, their pH is up to 6, 7, and 8. Big difference. So but they found ways they can bring the pH down by applying different chemicals.
Plus the bushes also, I think, were crossbred differently so that they could tolerate different pHs.
Yeah, they went down in the Florida and Carolinas and got these what they call rabbit eye blueberries and started crossing them.
Another breed too, but it all started basically with what Elizabeth did.
Yep.
In Whitesbog.
It's just amazing how it's spread, you know. Yeah. It all started at Whitesbog. Yeah.